All right, folks. So first of all, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for coming to this talk. And I'm deeply, deeply grateful to Nilima Bhatt and the entire Truth and Reconciliation team that has put this together. I could have never done this. So I appreciate that very much. And I want to thank everybody. And as you know, these are all free talks, effort to bring communities together. And I'll talk a little bit more about truth and reconciliation in a bit. But if you choose to, you can contribute to global COVID relief funds. I have a link on my PowerPoint, but you can, that's completely up to you. You can, do that on your own, anywhere you like, or not. That's perfectly fine. So just wanted to, get that. But before I go to my PowerPoint, I want to draw attention to the background, to this picture, the picture that you see. You see this female figure in the back of it, on this road. You wouldn't believe she is this amazing master in in a small village town in Tripura, India, where I was born. And she's actually a laborer. She's just going to, break small pieces of, you know, you know, stone to build a road. And she is a master goddess worshiper, a magical woman. So I wanted to, today is Guru Purnima. I want to say pranam to all the teachers, all the gurus. Without that, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be speaking. So I want to do that. And if you don't mind muting yourselves. Yes. Can you all mute yourselves? Okay. So, okay. So just wanted to why this particular background. So I'm going to share my PowerPoint. Let's see. Share. Okay. So here we go. So the title is Roots of Gynophobia, Forgetting of the Great Mother and Its Consequences. I use the word gynophobia rather than the other terms, and it's a whole spectrum there. From androcentrism, which is a mild form, which is simply centered on the masculine or male perspective, and which is also a spectrum, by the way, to sexism, that are roles, different sex roles that are assigned, very rigid, it becomes rigid, to gynophobia, which is fear of anything feminine, female, woman, to misogyny, which is abysmal hatred. So I picked this term. I'm an English teacher, so I like to play with different kinds of words here. So let's go. First, I want to talk a little bit about this truth and reconciliation. So from my perspective, truth about the self is something that we need to find. What is the truth about the self? And then perhaps there will be a reconciliation with the other, and whatever that other is. But in that quest, I mean, I'm talking about myself. We discover there is no self and there is no other. There is nothing but this profound Maitri and Karuna of the Great Mother flowing through the entire cosmos. So with that, and this light that shines within us that we do not know, I start with that. So here is that COVID fundraiser. If I can move away, do you all see this linked tree thing from TRW? That's the COVID link. Okay. Now, so in the description, I said that there is a flawed spirituality. So I'm just going to quickly read this. Some of our most virulent wounds and traumas come from a flawed spirituality that disrespects the feminine principle, our bodies, and sexuality. While patriarchal monotheism erased the Great Mother from the space of the divine, even some Indic paths have subtle devaluation of the feminized body. This session will examine the roots of that gynophobia and the severe consequences of the forgetting of the Great Mother. In the process, we'll attempt to bring to consciousness the submerged wholeness hidden within the depths of our fragile bodies and heal our foundational trauma, collective trauma. Okay. I don't know if this thing is going to work. Um, okay. So I want to draw your attention to the pictures. See, yesterday also I was talking about that conflict between word and image, that famous book, Alphabet versus the Goddess. There's actually no conflict, but pictures say things, right? So this flawed spirituality kind of, this image is an image of that. This is like, meditating in some abstract, world floating above everything, but completely covered with this spacesuit, right? Of course, you have to have spacesuit if you're in space, but metaphorically, we want to move away from our fragile bodies, and in some sort of an abstracted world. Okay. So let me talk a little bit about this rise of what I'm calling a spiritual patriarchy, both East and West. So one aspect of it is about unity without diversity. Okay. And again, I'm kind of simplifying things. Things are much more complex, which is Advaita. Most people do not experience Advaita. It is simply a concept in the mind, and it becomes a kind of a unity where we are afraid of diversity, afraid of difference, and kind of a homogenized idea. And that includes the fear of the body, flux, impermanence, everything changes. And there is tremendous fear for the annihilating power of sexuality. Yesterday, I talked a little bit about that with Suki. And it includes the Brahminic caste and gender trouble in India, which, in a reductive way, looks at the world, the feminized world, as illusion. But all the great masters, the real masters, the gurus, they know that it is the mind that creates the illusion. So this is a line from Ramana Maharshi. The mind is Maya. Reality lies beyond the mind. But most of us are stuck in that, mental constructs. So this particular kind of rise of spiritual patriarchy, by the way, it's a collective thing. We cannot have some sort of a blame game here, because then we will never get out of this, and that truth and reconciliation will not happen. But it is dominated by a global priesthood, who kind of control certain kind of knowledge that are primarily dogma, doctrine, and people who are too busy to go in the quest sometimes digest that unconsciously. So this patriarchy, and I'm going to look at it in a little bit in an Indian language also. There are two ways. Nigama, which is I call the exit path. It requires distance from the changeful world, but you get stuck there. In the path towards the self, you have to separate yourself, but you cannot get stuck. You have to return. Okay. So the agama, that's the term that is used in India for all of those paths that are about the feminine, where the feminine is, venerated, revered. uh, I call it an entrance path. Is the tantric return, where the world itself is this luminous, free nirvana. Samsara is nirvana. So so this is what is imaged actually in the dynamic samadhi of dance of Kali and Shiva. You see all these images where these two dance together. So this is the tantric goal of sahaja, easeful spontaneity, where the great mother resides. But most of us have forgotten her, forgotten what that really means. So now the term gynophobia, I put this provocative image here. The gynophobic religiosity, where the elephant in the room, most of the male discourse, you can see that there is this female body, all right, the desiring body, the alluring body, which is in every religious text, textual tradition, not the oral tradition, where this fear, tremendous fear of the female body. So then, you need to run away from it, or, this is temptation, original sin, all kinds of stuff have kind of congregated around it. And it's a problematic thing, by the way, because human beings create all sorts of stuff. But this is the image, this is the fear of the body, and which is always, for some strange reason, we don't seem to think in this kind of construct, then male bodies are bodies too, as fragile and as tempting as the female body. All right. So this is a little thing that I have written in my second book, where the construction of a patriarchal God, purely male God, and what is the consequence of that. So I'm just going to quickly read this. Most followers of the biblical tradition do not have in their consciousness any memory of the mother God. After all, no one I had talked to could even imagine her or his spirit God in female form. The biblical God was decidedly male. It is strange that this imageless divinity has such a clear male image. In spite of the prime commandment against graven images, images are formed in the mind as soon as we enter language. In addition, almost always genders are implicated, even within apparently neutral ideas. I figured that even the atheists and secularists were vigorously denying the existence of a biblical father god. Since there was no trace of the mother god in their consciousness, they could not deny her. So, but I want to draw attention to this image though. If you look at it, most of you are probably familiar with it. Very famous Michelangelo here, Adam and God, right? It looks like it's a covenant between two male bodies. And this idea of the old man in the sky with the flowing beard. But do you see this God though? This God is not alone. This God is surrounded, actually being held by Hokmah, wisdom, female. So sometimes it's straight on our face. I didn't notice that for a very long time. But still, people just see that this is a male God alone and remote from the world. So now, where does this so now comes to this idea of the fear of form or attributes? And I'm combining both the Eastern and Western ideas. Most of you are familiar with the notion of the original sin. By the way, each idea is complex. It has deeper and deeper meaning. But people see, oh, it's the fear of sexuality. Eve, the disobedient Eve, brings evil into the world. She's the one who brings death into the world. So this whole woman blaming that we see in religions, that happens. And in the Indian world, where the Purusha Prakriti idea from a Sankhya notion, again often misunderstood as a dualist and stuff like that, but Prakriti, nature, everything, this beautiful creation, it has gunas. That's where the root of the word gyni comes from, gunas, attributes. So there is this fear of the attributes. And even when people are talking about sattva, rajas, and tamas, they're afraid of. Tamas, really afraid of. And they want to have the sattva, more pure. So there is this purity, kind of obsession with purity that you see, and how that creates tremendous, tremendous problems. And so, and then you can see in these ideologies this mother, even though we call Mother Earth, Mother Nature, but that's not divine, right? Within that kind of economy, it's a fallen and imperfect world. So these are some of the notions that we can think about. But let's look deeper into how this has come about. It is this extreme self-consciousness. It is the child who's separated from the mother, right, which is vital for the child to grow. But then the child gets stuck in this extreme self-consciousness. And this is an amazing book worth reading for everybody, called The Master and His Emissary. He's another doctor, like the doctor in Alphabet versus the Goddess that we mentioned yesterday, for those of you who were here. Um, and look at this image here. It's like this all-seeing eye from a broken mirror. So this is this tiny self that imagines. It's a bloated self, all right? Extreme self-consciousness that separates us from everything else. And he talks about the two brains, the left brain, the right brain, and this tremendous amount of work that has been done about the entire neurological system, the brain. It's fascinating how the real great scientists are discovering things about the way we perceive the world and the way we live in the world and their consequences. So, so he writes, I'm just quoting a couple of things from there. There has been a relentless growth of self-consciousness, leading to increasing difficulty in cooperation. So separation from the mother, natural, but if we deny the mother, that means our connection with the totality, then we cannot connect with each other. So, an increasingly mechanistic, fragmented, decontextualized world marked by unwarranted optimism mixed with paranoia and a feeling of emptiness has come about, reflecting, I believe, the unopposed action of a dysfunctional left hemisphere. It's a mouthful, but I wanted to put it out there that his thesis is that the whole modern culture, all right, and now it is not west or east, it is all over the world, it is heavily left brain. Vital left brain is very, very important, but then it is, that's, the master is actually the right brain, but we have the emissary is the left brain, but we have become heavily left brain. So anyway, just throwing this out for those of you who want to explore this aspect of the psychology and our understanding of who we are. So, so this forgetting of the divine mother and this self-consciousness, that's, so this is the gynophobia. So again, I'm not saying a lot of this is actually completely
I promise.
Just 1 minute. I may have to mute. Sorry.
Hey, stop. Just stop.
Can I mute everybody?
Oh, yeah. Better get the air
Okay.
off you.
Okay. All right. Sorry about that, but I think, okay. So where was I? Okay. So this, I mean, again, I'm trying to connect images, images are speaking. So this unconscious burden that we carry, which creates this separation, this fragmentation, and it's become, so this separation has become too rigid. And then what is happening here, that we are afraid of emotions. Think about it. Practically all of the world's philosophies are constructed against emotions. Emotions feminized, right? Oh, females cry, females, so this whole fear of delicate emotions more, because most of the time in the patriarchal world, men are allowed to express one emotion, which is anger, right? But delicate emotions, love and tenderness, and even crying, heart emotions that are afraid. And then we all want to move away from that into this splendid isolation, because we are running away from all these things that we think are dark, dark emotions, sexuality, desire. That doesn't mean that we are actually transcending off or escaping them, but it's just this mentalized fear. And there is this too much imagined light. And when I was writing my first book, I came across this amazing feminist work, Take Back the Light, because this excessive light, we can't have light without dark, right? But the avoidance of dark, which is associated with the feminine, and then that you want to be pure, you want to be pure light, leads to all kinds of pollution ideas. In India, the whole Dalit thing, untouchables, or this whole fear of blackness, which I'm calling negrophobia. Again, it's connected with the deep fear of the darkness, but that darkness is not necessarily something negative. All right. So anyway, we can talk more about that. So these are all the problems with the ideologies of purity, but they're all coming from the foundational fear of the feminine. All right. So now, so this is one of my favorite writers, Anne Baring. This is one of her first books. She has another book, and she's absolutely amazing. So she talks about this split, right? So I'll quickly read. It is interesting that the old unity between the light and dark aspects of the goddess can be discerned in the wisdom literature. Now, let me give a little bit of thing. Even when we worship, the goddess in India, of course, the dark, the fierce is very much present. But you can see in the biblical tradition a separation between good wisdom and bad wisdom. There is this split, right? That's why you have, the Mary Magdalene and the Virgin Mother, that split. Yesterday was Mary Magdalene's, feast day, and I'm working on Mary Magdalene right now. That's why I wanted to mention that the wisdom is actually a wholeness. So she points that out, but the one image is now divided into two different figures, wisdom and folly. The dark aspect of the ancient goddess is personified by folly, right? The entire patriarchal structure is dependent on denying that, great mother who is an integral whole. All right. Now she's portrayed as a prostitute, persuading humanity with many allurements to forsake the path of wisdom. Behind the image of both wisdom and folly, spoken of as the strange or foreign woman, stands Ishtar, the virgin goddess of Babylon, whom the Jewish people left behind when they returned from exile, and whom they named the Great Whore. Very important to understand what is the root of these, uh, in the passages on folly, the ecstatic sexuality that was once included in the totality of the goddess as her power and enacted in the fertility rites of her temple is now the image of evil and death, etc. Very, very important to understand how that split kind of arose as, this constructed, disembodied spirituality gets created. So, how religion, reality, and objective science, I'll talk a little bit about objective science, which is the complete opposite of this, but how they affect us. Religious perspectives affect how we see reality, nature, animals, vegetation, life, and death, because these are the conditioned things. The cultures give us these different kinds of ideas, and we most of the time just digest them hook, line, and sinker, unless that hunger, arises for the truth, for reality. So and now think about the way the so-called objective science, perception of an objective reality, replete with separate, different things that stand alone and get randomly impacted, like the billiard balls in a pool table, has been a staple of scientific thinking that arose out of European Enlightenment. Now I'm creating this broad spectrum so you realize that this is the way we are perceiving the world. So these are random things. Right? This is old science, by the way, not quantum, not 20th century, which is a totally different, fabulous stuff that is happening now. But a lot of people still live by that, right? We're all separate individual things that are randomly, moving around. And what has happened in reaction to extreme religion, oppressive religion, the opposite happens. It is the scientist who takes on this godlike stance, rejecting the all sign of a judging father god, right? You had this judging father god, and now rejected scientist is the god. He desacralizes the cosmos and makes it his playground, dissects animals who, according to Cartesian postulates, have no res cogitans. This is the Cartesian split between mind and matter, res extensa, everything that extends, which is again body, matter, feminized. And Descartes says the animals do not suffer. Anyway, I don't want to beat up on Descartes too much. It's Cartesians that are more who have created this kind of even more severe fragmented world where everything is for our consumption, everything is that we dissect, and everything is just stuff. Okay, so this is psycho-spiritual patriarchy, and in order to deal with this, that what I think happened in the Western world is the fourth wave sacred feminism. So the questions that arose: what are the ramifications of an unconscious acceptance of God the Father, even if consciously denied? What are the consequences of a radical metaphysical dualism that pits polarities against each other? What happens to both women's and men's psycho-spiritual identity if the culture is saturated with androcentric symbols of power? Planetary crisis of epic proportion, okay, might have led to a worldwide resurgence of the feminine. So you can see today, as a result of this collective thing, we have devalued Earth Mother, right? And now we're facing this incredible crisis, and a lot of people are coming together in order to somehow come to consciousness about it and hopefully save us. So I wanted to respond yesterday. Thank you, Suki, for this. I looked at the chat, and one person has asked about what is this abstract spirituality and who benefits from it. So I wanted to respond to that. So this disembodied patriarchal spirituality, right? I'm calling this is the flawed spirituality. Who benefits from it? Okay. It is a disembodied, imagined spirituality away from the feminine that is seated in the body. And until we reach the sky element of pure consciousness and descend, we must be careful of mental constructions. Okay. So yes, there is sky-like consciousness. Yesterday, Suki's title, Dancing with the Sky-Clad Goddess. Yes, she's a sky-clad goddess, but you can't have it just in your head. Reaching pure consciousness is total freedom, right? And but the agamas, they want you to descend and connect with the earth, grounded reality. That's where the green tara. So the blue tara, blue sky meets with the yellow earth, and that's where the green tara. But you have to descend from it. If you're not there, then there is this abstract idea, right? This abstract something in our head. Now, who benefits? So think about speculative finance today. Mentalized power structures within the collective gain short-term benefit like amassing huge amount of money. So think how capitalism, late capitalism works. Again, I'm not going to go into that. It's just abstract stuff. It is not grounded in production. A lot of people make money by not actually doing anything, producing, creating something tangible, but simply speculation, right? Sexuality too can become a mentalized abstraction. We buy and sell a lot of stuff in the name of that. And because what, and then this abstracted thing, when we imagine all good things like heaven, moksha, nirvana, beyond life, like even in the idea that, oh, fourth stage of life is moksha. How is fourth? Moksha is cleansing. That's what the root word means. So we fall prey to this abstract spirituality. So I think, okay, okay, Rashmi, you were the one who asked. Thank you for asking that question. So I wanted to respond to that. Okay, so what I meant by organizing difference in this oppressive way. So what has happened as a result of that split? That difference we experience, men and women, day and night, all these different things in a spectrum. These are not, we know sexuality too is a spectrum. But what has happened that we put male, spirit, mind, light, soul, white, father in heaven, good, west, all the good stuff up there. Female, flesh, matter, darkness, body, black, hell, evil, east, mother earth, all of them are bottom, right? So this is hierarchically organized difference, and that includes Indian idea samsara is bad, nirvana is good. So this is a vertically organized, and all kinds of terms, and we can see the seeds of sexism, racism, colonialism, and other tyrannies written in this organization. So many, as I said, it's not just Western, but what is the West, but it is rooted in certain kind of understanding of these polarities. Okay, so it has led to, this is a chapter in my book, last book, Absent Mother God of the West, where I talk about matricide. Okay, killing of the mother. You can't kill the mother, but textually that did happen. All right, it has led to tremendous imbalance. Now I'm a Kali, so the reason I talk about this book, Longing for Darkness by China Galan, Tara and the Black Madonna. It is this hunger in her, mother hunger, that actually startled me. I didn't even know about that. That how this oppressive patriarchal religion affects women. So that's what led to my journey, which is a reverse journey into the Western world. She ends up in India and Nepal and discovers Kali and Tara, and fabulous, fabulous writer. All right. But this matricide, all right, both actual in religion, the female has nothing to do with the divine, as well as the understanding of a more, complex idea, they very much began to get into our whole skin there. And that's why Magdalene was erased. Now she's coming back. The sphere of blackness, darkness, sexuality. But blackness is wisdom. Blackness is wholeness. This is where there is a redemptive light of darkness, and that gets lost in this whole thing. She's black because she's colorful. She's life, mysterious, ever changing, eternal life. So these are all parts of that. Now, in the psychological realm, I teach that in my Goddess in World Religions course, and I use film because students can immediately see what happened. If you're familiar with the film Black Swan, you can see that split. You have this white woman and you have dark woman. The darker woman epitomizes sexuality, right? And this, you can't put them together because there is this tremendous fear, and you can watch the film and check that out. I'm just throwing it for you to understand what that split leads to women's psyche. And I also talk about in my book about the hunger for the mother in the male psyche. It does devastating things to the male psyche, by the way, because it gives the even greater illusion of power that he actually does not have. Okay, so you can see that this, now what does it lead to? So you create abstract heavens or you create technotopias. So this is the other aspect here. So the desire to escape biology body has been at the heart of many religious traditions that we talked about. Messy aspects of life culminating in death often create a hunger for a different existence. Now see, this death, Kali is also death, by the way. Really, the reality of this complete extinguishing. Nirvana too means extinguishing. Extinguishing, not just physical, it's an extinguishing of the self. It's very, very frightening. All right. So this kind of fantasies are created away from that we talked about. Now, I want to now move to this scientific idea of creating technotopias, right? Technological utopias. So, what has happened as a result of that mechanistic atheism is also running away from mother, right? That matter, totality. Okay, separating mind, the great mother is inherent in matter. Our relationship to matter is so skewed now. That's why we have become consumers, right? Horrendous consumers. So, matter is feminized and the Cartesian split. We talk about, we are so proud when we say mind over matter. uh, and then money becomes God under capitalism, right? So matter is nothing but stuff for us to consume. Then the body is kind of biologized. It's nothing but biology, the sacred nature of it, sacred understanding of what is sacred, by the way. Sacred is something that's interconnected, pulsating, most joyful reality, which is our subjective inner experience. If we can move away from these, conditioned stuff, we can experience it. But unfortunately, the structures kind of collective structure, we have ended up with this whole thing. So so this scientific, and I'm using the word scientific, not science. Real science is great actually. It's seeking of truth. It is not different from any kind of deep religious philosophical searching for truth. What is reality? But what has happened, the scientific objective is single truth, right? Not too different from monotheistic patriarchal categories, and sometimes even more dangerous that, that has happened today. So we have reached this digital age, digits, numbers, all things are just, again, this fragmented stuff, and led to what the people are now calling Anthropocene, the human effect in the world, right? This mm, incredible. Now, by the way, don't forget, in this world of polarities, everything creates good and bad effects, right? I'm using this fabulous machine, right? We are connecting around the world with this machine. So it's not that I have anything against the machine. The machine gives me the, but as long as it is a tool, as long as it's not digesting me, but in many cases it is. And when we get caught up in this digital world totally, then it can create this, and again, mentalized technotopia, right? It has created a thought culture, too much thinking, right? So look at these images we see all the time. This, what does this woman have to do with this car? But that's how we sell stuff, right? The female body is objectified. Remember, it's matter, it can be consumed, and women digest that too, right? So the power via one's car. How do you get power? Through these objects. So the sign value of a sports car marked by an objectified female figure all over the place. And those of us who've been studying these things and teaching, we know how deeply harmful it is to both men and women when we unconsciously digest these. Okay, it has led to all kinds of crazy things, loss of meaning, and I like the word Disneyfication of the world. There's a happiness machine, right? There's a happiness machine that you can go on. This is what the earlier quote from McGilchrist, that there is this unnatural optimism. Oh, we are looking toward this perfect happy world of technotopia, but what is the reality? addiction, mental illness, because we have lost touch what is concrete and beautiful and most nourishing. So the other day I was reading about deaths of despair. So many people are dying today from diseases of despair. How sad is that? In the middle of plenty, right? In the middle of everything that the Great Mother has provided us, and we are just suffering. Is the, like the Buddha who had said that we sit right next to the most nourishing stream and die of thirst. So now look what has happened to the female world, right? So these robots, the creation of these female, it's like some of these things unbelievably sick. So this fantasy machine that is being created, right? So you can run away from the real woman, the real, by the word women can do that too. so so this whole idea of escaping into some sort of a machine world, because then you don't have to worry about emotions, you don't have to worry about the vulnerability, you don't have to worry about dying, right? Because you can, I have written about that too, that you can download your consciousness into a machine, whole project right here in Google with Ray Kurzweil. I have written that about that. And we have exacerbated, we have made this whole, you know, by the way, human beings always had to deal with this mental chatter, right? Which the yogic world calls chitta vritti. We're not able to communicate. We're stuck within our own minds, and there is this incredible brain chatter. And we drown that with drugs, with tremendous noisy stuff, the noisy music, noisy, even this crazy roller coaster rides that are just giving us thrill, right? These are just thrill seeking, that because the meaning is lost, the real joy is lost. So I also see, now let me just connect with some of these mythologies. In India, we have this Rahu, Ketu, kind of disembodied head. So I see the machine as a devouring head. If you are not aware, if you realize the machine is a tool, it is absolutely great. Okay. But otherwise, it can be a devouring head. Like the capita in capitalism, it can devour everything. So the understanding of infinity, everything something infinite and boundaryless, is great if you experience that, which requires sadhana. That's what all the sadhanas, all the practices do. But otherwise, we become this boundaryless, all right? We do not realize. So the body gives us limit, the body grounds us. So infinity with no boundaries of a body is actually not a good thing. That creates this Rahu, this idea of this devouring head and hungry ghosts. So the hungry ghost, Vajrayana Buddhism, Tantric Buddhism talks about that. Many of you may know about it. Gabor Mate, this fabulous doctor, who writes about addiction and everything, uses that in one of his books. So we become these hungry ghosts. That means in the middle of plenty. So there are these, entities with long, thin necks. There are all kinds of stuff all around us, but we cannot eat. So in the middle of plenty, we feel constant, discontent, which of course is the root of dukkha. That's the first noble truth. And that, of course, has led to the polluted earth. We are constantly running, we have become machines bound to this time, which actually doesn't exist, but we have become slaves to that. And I see that, my students constantly running around for some carrot that is hanging in front of them. And that, most of the time you can never reach, because it is, it's not something that is real. So now, as a result of that, so this whole misogyny is connected with misandry. So misandry is hatred of men, right? So misogyny, gynophobia leads to both of these things, right? So they're two sides of the same coin, and it leads to fatherhood. I talked about that, with Neelima for another talk, and that this is a development of the same idea. So when there is this mother wound, and that's a whole many layers of that, from gynophobia, loss of the great mother, then women react to patriarchy, okay, and rage, anger, but rage and anger against patriarchy, which is a system, is different from rage and anger against human men. Okay, so how do we manage that? Either misandry leads to love of patriarchal power. Women manage that. Okay, I want that patriarchal power. Okay, and some women have done fabulously well and perfectly good. There's no problem in going and finding that kind of power. But in the end, if it is not giving us nourishment, then it is again leading to those, then we become dependent on addictions and all kinds of things for dealing with the consequences of that. Okay, so again, I talked a little bit about how I ended up doing all this, who had taken Kali for granted. I didn't even realize. So okay, let me see. There is a comment here. Since I have a minute, what do you say to young women who say feminism are just concepts, choose not to subscribe? Oh well, okay, good question, Catherine. I have to see. I teach women's studies classes. I have to remind these young women who are also slightly, kind of under too much glitz. You wouldn't be sitting in the classroom without feminism. I have nothing against feminism. Feminism is a very important, powerful movement for economic power, for equality. But so these are not concepts. These have desperate consequences. Patriarchy as a mental construct is one thing, but it has desperate consequences. We don't want to mix these things up. So yes, so think about it. A woman who can say that today, that means, are you really free from both patriarchy and feminism as concepts? And are you inhabiting the compassionate, gorgeous beauty of, and it doesn't have to be great mother, your own being? Are you are you connecting with the world with tremendous joy? Then you don't need the patriarchy and feminism, right? That means you've already reached some high thing. So yes, so thank you for mentioning that. But so this idea, this gender trouble, and why I wanted to express a different truth, how I ended up writing my first book, and now I'm in this fabulous journey of experiencing the profound joy of the esoteric aspects of Christianity, Judaism, and Sufism. I was already familiar with, having grown up in India. But what has happened to this, so when you react, right, so original sin, okay, when this oppressive aspect, but then what happens, the opposite takes over. So the opposite, that means then what happens, the women say, okay, I'm mainly sexual power, all my power is actually sexuality, okay, and I'm like men, and this whole idea somewhere that if I just behave like men, then I will be free. But think about it, there is still a male worshipping, right? If men sleep around, I can sleep around. Good. If it works perfectly fine, there's no problem, right? But most of the time, that actually does not help. So this, from Puritan, extreme Puritanism to extreme indulgence, right? This thrill seeking, an aspect of sexuality can also be pure objectification of the body, your own body and the body of the other, right? So, and then this, this one book that I haven't read yet, this, the male power worship that happens as a result of that. Now, let me just talk a little bit about this virus, because that has kind of suddenly made so many of us aware of that. Not necessarily everyone. Hopefully, it will lead to some changes. This is communicating, right? For me, it's like an avatar. It's like the great mother coming and saying, go to your room, go within, seek reality. There is a portal. This line actually, Arundhati Roy, who says the portal is open for transformation, both for, this is a portal. So maybe we need to recognize that now this, think about it, this is also an entity that is, we cannot put our finger on it. It's both alive and dead, right? It's affecting us. It is affecting us. And perhaps it is time. Mother Earth is giving us a warning to return to the Great Mother, return the wholeness of the totality, wholeness of the totality. So, how do we reclaim that? We have to redeem the sacred nature of our bodies, sexuality. Yesterday, I talked about this first book, and how Tantra uses, by the way, all the myths about Tantra, oh, it's about sex, and it's true in a way, because it makes us face the power of sexuality and death together. They're two sides of the same coin. Right? And how we transmute that energy, this alchemical transmutation that is possible under the traditions of the Great Mother. And so then what happens? You move from this thinking, Now, this is a book by Heidegger, and a fabulous book, actually. And I use the word forgetting of the mother from his philosophical text called Forgetting of the Being, because we have forgotten the mother. So, how we move from just thinking, which is not thinking, which is automatic, a little bit of experimentation with watching your own mind, you will see what actually your mind does. And I do that in my classes with all my students, and they can see it, how they're not present, that they're so stuck in their brain chatter. So, how we move from that thinking brain chatter to dhyana, all right, which is concentration and layers of that yoga, different ways. And this is my family's guru Siddhama, who had given me this incredible experience in the very early in my life, in my 20s. And dissolution, which I say that Kali, devouring Kali, had come and cut off my head, that I talked a little bit with Suki yesterday. So now, what we need to do, we need to make Earth as the focal point of our universal consciousness. Okay. There is this evolutionary imperative right now, I think, collectively, that if we want to really reclaim our inheritance, which the mother has given us, right? We are children. The Buddha, Shiva, the Christ impulse, okay? Which is the awakened being, by the way. It's not male, but there is a reason why these figures, and they're huge, numbers and numbers of women, great, great women masters. But the male of the species has one kind of journey, female of the species, and the whole spectrum is different. But in the end, this awareness, the consciousness, this awareness of foundational spanda, vibrating universe, where these two dance together, right? The Christ and Magdalene, different ways, different way you want to put it, Shakti, Shiva, Yin Yang, whichever way. And this is how they dance. So my thing, since I write a blog also, I call it Stand Under the Mother Principle, which is actually delighting in the void of our innermost being, and we can dance. See, the fear of that emptiness, since Kali, for me, I call her pregnant nothingness. Once you are at home with that profound nothingness, no thing, right? It's not a thing. But then our relationship to things also change. Our relationship to matter changes. Our relationship to others, right? So knowledge of the self, right? That's the truth. Reconciliation with the other, whether the objective world, people, this whole oppressor, oppressed, oh, victim, victimizer, it just dissolves, because then we experience that incredible joy, and it is possible. That's why all the great masters have created the paths. They have showed us the way. They know in the end it is ineffable, but still they have created these paths for us. And so it is time, probably maybe that's why an English teacher has to speak about these things, to return to the great mother and free us. And how do we free us? Not by escaping, simply bringing us to consciousness, becoming aware, and then all these phobias and all these specters just dissolve. Thank you very much. All right, folks, so now we have plenty of time, 40 minutes or so, for a conversation. Freemasonry and its contribution. Well, I know very little about Freemasonry. Okay, all right, folks. So, any questions for me?
I have a question.
Yes, Margot.
Jump in. Hi.
Hi.
So let's see. A little background is that I think unconsciously I've been stumbling into this whole universe, physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually, and socially. And
Mm-hmm.
social is the one that sort of lit my fire, like the whole feminism and all that. And I've read a lot of books. I'm doing my PhD on all of this, and so a lot of the things you talk about are like just really reinforcing, as you know, because we've had a lot of conversations. And there's this question lingering at the back of my mind in spite of everything, and wondering to what extent it is, just our greed and our addiction to power and control and all the illusory things, the gratification, the materialism, the capitalism, and all that, that has driven us off the deep end. I'm not even going to say to the edge of the precipice, because I think we're over the edge. And to what extent could there be an effect of Kali Yuga, that we're simply this is the end of a cycle, and we're in self-destruct mode, and then that leads to the further question of, obviously, no matter what the answer is, as an individual in my own consciousness, the way that I orient my actions and my consciousness, I'm going to do my utmost. But to what extent, what role are we to play, spiritually, socially, etc., in spite of, like, what is driving this? Or is it just our ignorance and greed, and or is there also a kind of a larger effect of the Kali Yuga?
Well, I wish I knew an answer to that. So the way I look at it, so every tradition imagines this kind of a movement, right? Different ways of movement of time. So the reductive understanding of a linear biblical time, right? The creation and then the end times, right? Which has led to this thing. Oh, the world is going to end. The world is going to end. So consume, 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 or you look for some other this thing, right? So that's an effect of a linear time. Effect of a linear time. So this apocalyptic sense that has come from this idea that the world is going to end. So God created everything, all right, and now everything is going to end. But look at the word, the end time. The word is revelation, right? Apocalypse actually means revelation. That means things reveal themselves. The veil gets lifted, all right? Now, if you think about the cycle, the problem with cycle that, oh my God, it's just going round and round and round, right? So the Mayan calendars and all that, we know about how, oh, the world is going to, people, those who think linear, they think the world is going to end. Okay. So what do? You either, even all kinds of bunker hiding and, looking for this thing. That's one reaction. Or, okay, some spaceship is going to come and will be lifted. Even the notions of rapture, right? All the sinners will be left behind and will be taken over to some great heaven. All of these things are part of that kind of ideology. The things are going to end, things are going to end, right? Now, let's get to Kali Yuga idea, right? From Satya to, Dwapara to, so this thing, okay, everything kind of falls apart and then starts again, right? Or it's a spiral. What if we are actually, if this great understanding of this void, so the entire manifest world is within the body of the great mother, and it comes and goes all the time. In the beginning is desire. It is not that there, in the beginning was the word. Okay, so the universe is coming into being all the time, all the time. Now, I don't have any access to the cosmic understanding, but science tells us one day our sun will die, right? So, well, that's too big. That's just too big for me. I am not going to sit there and mentalize some sort of cosmic end someday. I need to act here and now. I need to act in every possible way, believing that we are responsible. By responsibility, we mean we need to respond. We need to respond. I wouldn't sit there and speak if I thought, well, it's Kali Yuga and it's going to happen. What am I going to do? Right? But Kali Yuga is also me, right? So don't forget, in this interdependent universe, all of us are in it together. And no great master or great tradition ever says that things will get better or it'll get to Satya Yuga by itself, right? The notion of karma Not, oh, this karma goes around and comes. No, no, karma is action and its consequences. And so the action that is done without the mentalized, kind of consequences connected with that, that action actually frees us. Okay, we're able to act without any gita, okay, without any attachment to the consequences. It can free us. Okay, so I would say that these concepts are helpful, so that we don't take too much responsibility. They help us balance that. Maybe it is some sort of a time thing, but we don't know. What Kali does, she eats time, right? Kali, she eats all time. So once you experience the great mother, right, who's constantly giving birth and taking the whole this thing within her own womb, right, is arising, and so this constant arising. So once we feel that through our practices, because it's in our bodies, so we don't then superimpose a massive time, right? That's what the yoga idea is. That's great, right? It's great to sit down and think about it. But in order to act here and now, we need to say, hey, there is suffering. There is suffering as a result of our collective action. And we need to do what we can. Thank you. Okay, there is a question here. Rashmi, do you want to speak or do you want me to read this?
Yeah, I can read it. Thanks,
Okay.
Marco, for that question. So I'm constantly wondering about the role of power and privilege in this whole gamut of things, as to what belief systems. And I'm not reading the question, I'm just bringing it out from my head as it comes. um, so what role does power and privilege have to play in this? Because many times we see people who have more power, more privilege, whether it is whether it is race privilege, rank privilege, caste privilege, and all that. It's very easy for them to get into this kind of dialoguing and talk about spirituality in abstraction, like you rightly showed in that picture, and still continue to be in that. So for them, I feel like a lot of people who have more power and intersectionality of power and privilege, very difficult for them to break that illusion, to be able to see the reality. There's a new layer of adaptability and seeing beyond the illusions that is required, which they are not comfortable with. It's not a comforting space, right? Because like yesterday also, when I attended your talk, it was about death and to be able to see the dark, which is not a comfortable place for these a lot of privileged and powerful people. And yet they have ramifications. Their ideas, thoughts have ramifications on what is happening in the earth. So this is not equal. This thing is not equal. This thing is, even though there is machinery, even though there is connection with people and all that happening, but the more powerful people have more influence, and they have more impact, than the people who are lower in pecking order. And I'm just using that word pecking order because it really exists.
Yes.
So then what is it that needs to be done by folks who are in power and privilege positions, people who need to understand their power and position, privilege, and what is it that people who do not have that power and privilege, who live on the other extreme and have Kali visit them every day, like they live in that literal, that thing of consciousness of should I live, should I not live, like a existential crisis of body and mind both. So so there is a inequality there. So I am curious about what is that, what is required for that separation to be seen in ways that creates that social justice. uh,
Yes.
yeah, so I don't know, it's a very big question. I'm just bringing it out.
No, and it's a very important question. So listen, we have to acknowledge our own privilege. Other people's privilege we can't do anything about. All right. There's nothing I can do what Amazon or Google is doing, right? all I can do, I'm a teacher and I read and I share my ideas with you. I'm highly privileged. I'm one of the most privileged in the world because I have Kali, which is a nothingness. So, yes, there is incredible despair, disparity. Today, there is more, this economic despair. So remember the speculative finance that creates incredible wealth for some, right? But what am I going to do about that? I am one of them. I'm very privileged. Okay. I can travel around anywhere in the world and I do that. Okay.
Yeah.
And I recognize. But in the end, truth and reconciliation, truth about the self and reconciliation with the other. That within my limited power, each one of us can only do what we can do. We have to collectively fight against the system. Okay. So a kind of politically democratic socialism. Okay. The social justice, we each fight for that. We each have to contribute towards that. But again, people have to come to that consciousness on their own. The polarized world, a political world, is extreme right wing, extreme left wing. We know what the consequences have led to. All right. So the struggle, by the way, real spirituality, the mother centered spirituality, is not abstract. It is not sitting in some, cave in splendid isolation. It is about working. So therefore, think about liberation theology. Think about the real Christ, people who are actually fighting with the poor. And how do we create? We have created poverty, right? We have created abysmal poverty, which is different, which is different from. We also need to understand what is wealth and what is poverty. All right. What is real wealth? This incredible poverty within wealth, the mental illness, the depths of despair. So we also don't want to sit there and imagine another some abstract, perfectly happy, perfectly wealthy, perfect world that some privileged people live. Maybe they do. Maybe they do. So the question here is, we can fight without hatred. How do we create truth and reconciliation? We realize we have created this kind of abysmal disparity, incredible wealth, and horrendous poverty. By that, see, a lot of people in simple worlds live in great wealth, okay, because they're not constantly hungering for something great. But we have destroyed their habitat, indigenous people. And I'm not romanticizing poverty either. Everybody needs to live a decent life. We need to have, healthcare, education, clean air, clean water. We need to imagine a different world together. But sitting there and being angry with what Jeff Bezos is doing with Amazon or Bill Gates, it's a waste of time. Okay, it's a waste of my time. All I can do is sit there and share and do whatever little I can do within my own limited space. So yes, I hear you, but in the end, we only have power over ourselves. We can only change ourselves and our little worlds around us. Otherwise, it's a, see, we in our literary, we talk about grand narratives. Every time we have created grand narratives like huge communist utopia, we have created severe opposite of it, actually. Oh, we are gonna, or even Plato's Republic, you cannot create these perfect worlds. Oh, everybody is going to be equal. It hasn't worked. It has not worked. So these grand narratives of changing the whole world, I'm going to change the whole world, I cannot change the whole world. But yes, thanks to the teachers, thanks to the methods, I have seen the difference that reduces suffering. And in the end, a lot of suffering happens in the family, in our immediate world. It is not some robber, some horrible person somewhere out there who is actually affecting us. Is the conflict, the suffering, even think about oppression of women or rapes. They happen in the closest quarters. So anyway, I'm giving too much of a big answer to your question, but let's change our little worlds. Let's do what we can within our small worlds and let the whoever out there, and there's a lot of people doing wonderful work, And if I focus on the horrible things that are happening, I will be paralyzed. I wouldn't sit there and try to talk to people. So I try to, I know sometimes I'm told I live under a big rock. So I sometimes live under a big rock. So, this, the terrible things, and I'm not naive. I'm not naive. I know the reality, but too much emphasis on others' privilege and others' responsibilities is actually not skillful.
Mm. Thank you so much, Neela.
Thank you. Anybody else? So, Kwinder, you are mute.
So you were speaking about how Brahmanism has tried to kill the tantric worldview and sublimate it. This whole notion of purity and pollution. Hmm. Can you hear me? I think
Yes, I can hear
my
you.
internet is not. This purity and pollution that has um, really clutched Indian minds very deeply.
Yes,
Uh, even those of us who are not Brahmins, even we have internalized the purity and pollution thing so deeply. This is pure, this is impure. And somewhere that has also deadened some impulses inside of us. And it's a way of demeaning the feminine, definitely.
right.
So how does this Brahmanical system go about doing this? What is the mechanics of it so that once it becomes clear,
Hmm.
we will notice it more and we will be able to do something about it because it's so unquestioned, so in the unconscious. Um,
Yes,
yeah, when I talk about Tantra in gatherings, there are smokes and there are, funny laughter kind of a thing, like mocking.
yes,
Don't
yes,
take a serious time. So these things are also there. It's like putting big put downs on such things. So I'm just, even historically, what has been the mechanics of doing this by this Brahmanical society?
right, right. Wonderful question, Suki. Wonderful question. Very complex, very complicated. So think about this whole purity and light. It's a part of the same thing, like racial purity, right? How do you keep racial purity? By controlling women's sexuality. If the woman decides to sleep with whoever and bear his child, how will you keep racial purity? How will you keep the Brahminical caste system, right? So India is very complicated, by the way. And hey, Bhattacharya, my father's last name. Okay, so I know what Brahmanism is. But my father, to share something personal, when he was a child, he and his brothers and others used to burn dead, untouchable bodies. The worst thing you can do as a Brahmin's son, okay? Touching the untouchable's body, okay? The worst thing a Brahmin could, because that's the most impure, untouchable body. So as a result, my father's family was thrown out of the Brahminical seat. And I'm so proud of my father and the Kali lover, by the way, and grandfather. My grandfather said, my children can do whatever they feel like. Throw me out of this thing if you want to. All right. My grandmother, who's my mother's mother, very Brahminical, very much part of now what is Pakistan, Sylhet. She actually gave widow marriage, okay, at that time. But they couldn't break away from the Brahminical thing. But at the same time, some of them resisted it. So let's just imagine the conceptual, that historically it has happened. Okay, there are two paths in India. So Brahminism very much part of my system, by the way. So it's not something outside. And everything has created, Brahmanism has created great knowledge. All right. It's like rabbinical Judaism. Incredible, wonderful knowledge. That's the alphabet, right? That's the writing. That's the knowledge. And I love it. I love it. There's no need to throw all that into the, but the side effect of it, side effect is this horrible, horrible obsession with something pure. Now, what is pure? How do you get to pure? What is pure? We don't even know. In the polarized world, you can only understand purity if you have pollution, right? You can't have purity without pollution. The whole world is part of this wonderful duality. Can we have a Brahmin, so-called Brahmin, without a Shudra, right? Who's within the caste system, untouchables are outside. It has historical beginnings, it has psychological problems, and this is what I call about flawed spirituality. Now, when you foundationally believe that you have a caste, by the way, as I said yesterday, Kali mantra, your caste drops from your body. This is why Tantra is, laughed at, right? Because it destroys that structure. Tantra is a highly sophisticated, profoundly powerful method to free you. So first thing is moksha, which means cleansing, right? You purify. What do we mean by purifying? Coming to consciousness, right? Awareness. So, but it makes, what Tantra has done, by the way, it is skillful means in Buddha's language, right? Wisdom and compassion, pragya and karuna. Karuna means compassion, also skillful means. So by skillful means, you first elevate the one, feminine, right? In Brahminical system, the female is at the bottom, okay? Even though they haven't completely, they have made her a devi. Oh, sit there, there are other kinds of problems with too much deification. You have to then think about Satyajit Ray's devi, right? Human beings can create mess with anything. So in India, that mess has, but still it has these amazing things in it. If we do not get out of this caste ridden and extreme, and this is where the fear of pollution comes from, right? The caste pollution on Muslim, Mlecha, and they're all connected with body, right? But what is a real Brahmin? Is supposed to be the knower of Brahman, Advaita, all equal. There's tremendous contradiction there. Does that make any sense? If there is Advaita, grand achievement of Brahmanism, by the way, Upanishadic, Vedic Brahmanism, fabulous recognition, Aham Brahmasmi, I am Brahman, I am all this great expanse, then how can we sit there and create caste? But real reason is not something that this, and the Great Mother inhabits both. You recognize your unity with all that, but then you have this fabulous understanding that this is everything is this manifest world. But how do we struggle against it? All we can do is bring to consciousness that it all comes from the fear of some sort of polluted body, right? This dead polluted body or the live female body, it's all part of this thing that I'm kind of catchword I'm calling gynophobia. So in the Indian context, all great masters have fought against it. All great masters have, showed the problem with it. I was just reading this article, I just saw that about Rani Rashmani, who's a Dalit woman, by the way, Ramakrishna's, the Dakshineshwar temple. Rani Rashmani is a Dalit woman. So there are contradictions within India. The purity and pollution, my friend Frederick Apfel-Margolin, this amazing scholar, dear friend, who has worked that how there is a difference between auspicious and inauspicious, purity and pollution in many temples, like Puri temple, actually, the great things have to be done by Dalits. So it's very, very complex, but in general, the Indian psyche is not able to break out of this kind of reductive understanding, this hierarchically organized understanding of, like racism here, right? Constantly, this is what I say, talk about the negrophobia, fear
So
of darkness.
like in Brahmanism, if their purity is so fragile, because it can get contaminated by so easily. You touch something and your purity is gone.
But there is no
You
purity
go
in the
somebody's
first
shadow.
place.
Yeah, so these fragilities around purity are really ridiculous.
See, women are
And
not.
you were saying yesterday about, sorry, go
Yeah,
ahead.
go ahead.
You were saying yesterday also about that women, all women are Shudras by caste. So,
Right.
so then there is the solution then.
Yes, yes, absolutely. See, this is the male privilege part, right? So a Brahmin can go and sleep with anybody, and just the woman, because the male needs to have that privilege, right? That's why we have hundreds and thousands of jatis, right? Not just four castes. Because see, you may create these things, try to keep some sort of pure race, but in reality, it just doesn't work. Okay. By the way, I do want to create this distinction that the understanding of the body as already always pure, it is the mind that creates the pollution. The mind that creates all kinds of conceptual idea. Otherwise, what is so female purity, chastity, all this stuff, right? Because you can't have patriarchal traditions without that, right? This is the control of female sexuality. But women control, they have, you can reach a natural ethics. It's not like going from Puritan celibacy to extreme indulgence, right? So women are playing with it, women are trying to figure that out. But the entire construct of purity and pollution, that there is such a thing as purity, is total delusion. You can't have this understanding of purity without pollution. You need to think something is polluted in order for something. Think about, we are right now unable to drink clean water, and we are obsessing with this mental construct of pollution. We are polluting the earth, okay, with stuff, with garbage. The rivers in India are polluted. And here we are worrying about women's purity. I think I mentioned to you, I forgot where, when I started writing my blog, Stand Under the Mother Principle, after that horrendous Delhi rape. And I mentioned this woman who just said, oh, so what happens if I am raped? She gets up and, lives her life. Vajra bodies of women. Do not allow anything to pollute your mind, because you inhabit the body of the goddess. Nothing can pollute or violate the female body. This is pure tantra, by the way, and very frightening, very, very frightening, because that's where that little self-conscious control mechanism that's trying to control things, it just falls apart. So I don't have any solution to this. I don't have any answers to this. But to see over and over again this amazing Indian paths, right? The tantric path, the yogic path, they're all coming from this other end. In India, the dialogue never got completely suppressed. And I'm discovering even in the Western world, huge amount of was suppressed, but not, not really. The Gnostic tradition, the Kabbalist traditions, they're very much alive. But in India, it's a very sad thing that we are still struggling with caste problems and this female purity, impurity thing. Women need to just reject that.
Neela, I have a quick question
Yeah,
around, what have been the impacts of colonization that happened in India and was there for over 200 years, that has to do with this complexity that has gotten created. So if you can just throw some light on it.
right. Well, listen, it doesn't matter what colonialism did or didn't do. What are we going to do now? We can't keep blaming the British, a tiny drop in India's history. At one point in my academic life, I stopped doing post-colonial critique of colonialism. I said it's a 5,000 year, probably more, huge amount of history. Yes, it did tremendous harm to India. Its economic structure, its understanding of the self, it created this hyper masculine idea that we are these macho, we have to create macho gods, which India never had. okay? Because we began to ape our oppressors, right? Because again, light of this right religion, right of this, because it's power. So more and more we talk about that, more and more we remain colonized, okay? We need to own our own darkness. And here I mean by negativity. Yeah, caste was constructed in many different ways. We know how the codified Brahminical code under British things created all sorts of stuff. But hey, that was a long time ago. This is the 21st century. We can't keep looking at all those things and blaming somebody else. We can't blame colonialism for what we are doing to our neighbor today, what we are doing to our sisters and daughters and sons. Believe me, that is more important than what some British guy did a long time ago.
Yeah,
Why are we digesting that ideology even today? Why
yeah.
have we digested the consumerist ideology of stuffism if we are this, enlightened spiritual East?
What role does acknowledgement of colonialism play in truth and reconciliation is actually my question.
Yes, absolutely. So there is an external reality of colonization, right? That you can learn through history, through education. But more important, you acknowledge your own colonized mind. That I have digested unconsciously, not attacking ourselves, that I have digested a lot of strange things. And I just need to acknowledge that and free ourselves from it, not create straw enemies as a result of that. Yes, this is why truth and reconciliation, right? But right in the beginning, I said truth about the self and reconciliation with the other. So right now we have a planetary issue. We have individual despair, individual human suffering of every kind, from extreme, desperation, despair, poverty, extreme wealth. So yeah, but and again, it's because I'm giving you my personal opinion, right? Having lived here, lived in the United States, so-called, West, so-called oppressed. I also lived in India, in Bangalore for a couple of years, and I saw what was going on. So yes, acknowledge that happened in our history, but 200 years, what is it in these thousands of years of incredible wisdom? Why, what makes me so thrilled? How is it that India retained the Great Mother? What magic is there in that land? What magic is there in that that woman in my background? Abysmally poor from any kind of capitalistic system, but sublime joy. She has created a beautiful space for herself, completely clean, gorgeous little space. Okay, and it is possible. It is possible to create beautiful Shri, right? Shakta Tantra's Shri means beauty, prosperity. And that's what we need to focus on. I'm not saying don't look at colonialism. If you need to, absolutely study the history and let it go. Okay, I see a raised hand. SA, go ahead. Ask your question.
Yeah, yeah. Meela, thank you so much for that incredible research. And I was there at the talk yesterday also. Actually, I don't even know how to frame my question. And so
Don't worry. Go ahead. Just say.
I am an atheist and I don't know anymore what I am. And suddenly, a few years ago, Devi kind of just took me by the scruff of the neck, and it's hilarious, like what happens. But more and more in my body when I meditate, and I cannot digest the descriptions of the goddesses and the Mahavidyas. And I just want to know, is it possible that these are all written by men? Is there any text or anything which tells us something else about them? Because I feel sort of illegitimate thinking that this is not the correct description. And when they come to me, they come in such different forms than what has been described, And if I may, when I experienced Kali, I don't know whether she was Kali. Firstly, in the meditation, they asked us to call her Kali, Ma, Kali. I can't even say it. I can't even use the word Ma. Because when she came to me, she had her hair open, and Neela, she was my daughter,
Yes.
and I combed her hair.
Ah,
She's never been frightening. I've never had that dark night. For me, I was so powerful in that state, and I just want to know, where do I find anything? I don't even know what. I just don't know what to do. But I
plenty.
know that I feel I have to start with other women. I work with other women, young girls. I need to rewrite everything. I need to rewrite our religion. When we ask educated women who are into Devi, who's your favorite god? Who's your favorite god? And then be like, oh, Shiva's my favorite god, Krishna's my favorite god. And I'm like, you don't even know the stories of the deities because we don't know them, and we need to bring them back, and maybe that's my little contribution, but I just don't know where to turn. I don't even know if there's a question in there.
Wonderful. Wonderful. I love it. I love it. Okay. So atheism is a very good thing to begin because you don't believe anything. Okay. But you don't want to get stuck because then you believe in atheism, right? Don't start believing in theism or atheism because these are isms. What you are experiencing is this surge of energy, okay, inside you. All the Mahavidyas are in you. They're aspects of you. Okay. Kali, because she eats time, she's that womb, right? When the self is completely being extinguished, that is metaphorized in the figure of Kali. All the gods and goddesses are actually meditate on one level. These are energies and they are meditation tool. They're dharanis. You know what a dharani is? That holds you. Since your mind wanders all over the place, your body goes through these crazy impulses and urges, it helps you stabilize. Okay. So good that you don't want to believe anything, but trust the energy that is coming to you and try to calm it down. Okay. So what happens, Shiva, you can worship Shiva as some god, or you can awaken the Shiva principle in you, which is pure consciousness, which is never separate from Shakti, by the way. It's only when Shakti, in the aspect of whirling energy, that comes to this dynamic quiescence. That's what the Kali and Shiva lying prone under her feet, right? Who is Shava, unless the Kali's touches him, right? That's when this whirling energy stops and the Shiva Shakti in their total profound meditative beauty arise in you. That's what the whole method of Tantra is about. So, sex, greed, anger, all these things that are energies in us, right? What Tantra does, it does not say these are evil and bad and you need to suppress them because you need to get to some sattva, some pure consciousness and sit in your splendid isolation in a cave. Androcentric ways, escape from samsara. But Tantra, Mahayana, then Buddhism, Buddha's tradition, which is foundationally tantric, by the way we come to Vajrayana. But in the beginning, we need discipline. We can't jump. It's not like kindergarten to PhD. You can't do that unless karmically you were born that way. They're great masters who didn't have to go through but most of us have to climb the stairs, right? If you are having these experiences, breathe, learn basic yoga. There are hundreds and thousands of texts, powerful women teachers everywhere they're speaking right now. And it doesn't matter whether it's a woman's teacher or a male teacher. It is the teaching that is important. Today's Guru Purnima, I have learned so much. I cannot begin to tell you. So why I put this woman's thing in the back of this picture today? Okay, because nobody knows beyond her little village. Even my great Siddhama, highly powerful master, I grew up seeing how she brings Kali into actual tangible thing. And myself as a child, I had seen it. So this has nothing to do with theism, atheism. This is about transformation of being. This is alchemical transmutation that every tradition talks about. Read the little novel called The Alchemist. Fabulous thing. You can live
I
life.
think if I can interrupt, I
Please.
think what Surabhi is also saying is we need to trust our own inner wisdom, which is really arising now at this time.
Right.
Our bodies are revealing to us what is right, and we need to go by them rather than any text or any liturgy which has been provided to us. This is the format in which you do your work. That is not to say that we don't respect them, not at all, but to really have a true teacher who's been through it, who knows, who has realized, who has experienced, and who lives where the deity lives in her or him, then it's a different thing. But a lot of people read books and then they do this.
Yeah.
So and I have personally found in my own sadhana that I experience something and I get in touch with it and I believe it, or I work with it, and much later I find a book in which it has been said, oh, this is how it is. And this has been happening with me continuously. The first experience, then I find it in a book.
Yes.
So more and more women have to trust what is arising inside their own wisdom bodies.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You are so correct. And I like exactly the same thing had happened. I experienced things before. And then when I read, oh my God, I wasn't hallucinating. I wasn't imagining it. But there is a fine line. Always there is a fine line, right? So this is why it is sadhana, and also recognize, hey, I can make mistakes. The energy that is arising in me, right, which is doing some crazy things to me, and some of it is very intense, very, very intense energy can arise in you. And how do we act properly? How do we act properly? So it's we tread this path with as much awareness as possible, without as much fear as possible, and protect ourselves from false teachers. There are a lot of power mongering teachers. The texts, the real tradition in India was always transmitted orally, but texts were created. But don't go to texts. Don't go to texts unless the hunger arises in you. I know I was so bewildered by my initial experiences. I was living inside libraries, literally, to figure out what had happened to me. And you're right, something is happening collectively, and women's bodies are registering it. Okay, because the sensitivity of our bodies, the Vajra bodies, it is registering this other energy that is arising. That's why fourth wave feminism, women said, let's gather the women. Let's gather the women. Because it's just that our bodies know. It's a different kind of know. I call it gynosis. It's not textual knowledge, but we have to trust that guts and try it out and see, is it without harm? Is it something that leads to relative peace and reduces suffering? So absolutely trust yourself, okay, and become aware of your own conditioned mind. It takes a very long time, slowly and slowly and slowly drop all these isms, right? All these concepts. Yes, Virginia.
Like 10 years ago, you spoke about goddess Ishtar. 10 years ago, I had this experience of goddess Ishtar, and she was teaching me stuff.
Yes.
And I didn't know who she was, but I was in a flight, so I couldn't Google. So I said, okay, she's arrived and she's saying some stuff. And she started talking to me about womb cleansing and this, that, and the other. A whole lot of information she gave. So minute I reached home, I Googled and I found one of her names is also opener of the womb.
Yes.
And
Yes.
after that, for 6 months, she worked with me and worked with my womb and gave me a lot of information about the womb.
Yes. Oh, Ishtar. Ishtar could be the, yeah, looks like we lost you for a minute. Can you, yeah, unmute again, Sukhi?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So these things are happening now to women, and they're pretty exciting. And I learned my womb wisdom from her.
Yes. Very ancient deity, very powerful ancient goddess. So I so thrilled to hear that Ishtar visited you. So this is the mystery, right? How these powerful figures, Jung talks about the collective unconscious and all that, but so they're arising in different forms in all of us from our own being, right? See why the opening of the womb is so important, because that's where so much of our trauma, right? And the womb is your entire lower body, right? So the sexual wound, the terror, the fear of rape, all of these things are in that part. So then Ishtar arises and cleanses you. The priestesses of Ishtar were called the sacred prostitute. They didn't understand what a real priestess is, because they had no understanding. What if there is no such thing as prostitution unless there is buying and selling of sex, right? Oh, I'm so thrilled to hear Ishtar's visitation. Okay,
Yeah,
Virginia, you wanted to
she
say
taught me a
something?
lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, the thing is that every time I have a question, I mean, then somehow there is an answer, or let's say I could connect some dots, and I mean, it's amazing. I'm thrilled.
Okay, okay.
So I wanted to thank you for this fantastic. I mean, I'm fascinated with your easiness to move. I'm Greek. So, I mean, your ability to use Greek words and then mix cultures I mean, I wish one day I know more about the Indian, let's say, your Indian legends, your gods and goddesses. I think we have a lot of similarities.
Yes.
I mean, even the fact that you've been under the British, let's say, 200 or plus years. So we've been as well 400 plus under the Turkish occupation. And like you said earlier to what's her name? She left to Rasmi. You said that it is time, let's say, to put it aside. It's not, I mean, what happened too long ago. And I feel the same for the Greeks, that they keep, let's say, blaming that occupation even today. So one, let's say, question I have is, you really navigated us. I mean, it was like navigating through the oceans of the gynophobia, which is the fear against the women. And I wanted to understand, but you said something just a couple of seconds ago, that it should be us, the women, that we should really put the fears, which is the phobias, aside.
Right.
And really, if not lead, I mean, basically what we are doing, all of us are getting together. And for me, it's sad that very few men have participated in most of the sessions. I don't know why that happens, but still it's us, let's say, coming together. And then coming to the virus, because I fully agree that it's a message, let's say. I mean, we got this virus and we will get many more as long as there is this chaos between the horrendous poverty and the extreme, let's say, wealth we have created in the world. because we will have more and more viruses coming and attacking us. So in this door for the transformation, do you see these phobias? I mean, are you optimistic that the women, first of all, more and more, we will go over these phobias and help grabbing people from the hand, whoever, kids, males, more afraid women, and pass them to the other side? Because that's the way I have fantasized the transformation. It's like, let's say, going into another universe. Because you also said something about people are afraid of the sun that will die. Of course, it will die. It's a star, and everything is born, and then it dies and gives space to other lives, and etc. So yeah, that's after this very big introduction. So do you see us really managing soon? And when I say soon, not after 10, 20 years, because then the planet will be over.
Right, right. I wouldn't speak if I didn't. I wouldn't. I will die of despair. And I believe that if the mother is healed, if the woman is healed, the child is perfectly fine. And I'm talking about archetypal understanding of the mother and the child. The child is the male, the mother, and there are female child, but archetypally, and men can invoke the mother in themselves. Okay, but why women, need to heal themselves and get rid of the fear? Because they are the ones in the end who are holding the world. Okay, they are the ones on a daily basis raising children, feeding children, even when they have other jobs, right? And ordinary poor women never had the luxury of sitting, housewife or anything. They always work, they raise children. So that's why I think women, and in the world stage, right, learning, we have privilege. We have walked into the yang world comfortably. Men have not, because of patriarchy, they don't feel comfortable walking into the yin world. Okay, we have the privilege of walking into the yang world, so we can balance yin and the yang more easily, and then hope that men will feel comfort. And they are. Huge new generations of young men are feeling comfortable, recognizing equality and taking for granted. So yes, I don't know, optimism, pessimism, these are also part of the polarity. But yes, I have faith. I have Shraddha, that's the Indian. By the way, I love Greek world. One of my most profound experiences happened in Samos, one of the Greek islands. And I so connect with the Greek goddesses, the ancient Greek goddesses. I teach them in my classes, and the whole journey. Think about Chronos and Kairos. Chronos is time that eats, right? It's God, it's children. Kairos is this feminine, immersion into here and now. So yes, there are all kinds of colonizations, and colonizers are not all evil, right? They are all conditioned by their own historical contingencies. And at this point, I think that's pointless. We have to come to here and now and do what we can to live.
It's a kind of master as well. And as you said, each one of us, a little bit, a little stone, it's the ripple effect.
Exactly.
And not, let's say, dreaming of whatever is far away. Because, yeah, I mean, this way we will never finish.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Well, thank you. Thank you for your questions and coming to these sessions and see what.
Oh, yes. I'm very sorry that I lost the other one yesterday, but there was a conflict. I mean, I hope there is a recording.
Yes, there are recordings. They're all things. All of these
or
are
if
recorded.
You did it also in Facebook, then I could possibly go into Facebook and as well.
This is being it is on Facebook
Either
Live.
You can post the link of the YouTube on your timeline as well, so that people can find it.
I will do that once it is available through YouTube. Yeah, but the Facebook Live also
I
keeps it.
sent you in the morning. Neela, I sent you in the morning the link to yesterday's talk.
I saw that. Yeah, I haven't, since I was getting ready for this thing, I didn't click on it yet.
Yeah,
Thank you.
On
Thank you
your
very
own
much.
time, you can post it on your time.
I will do that. I will do that.
Okay,
Well,
thank you very much once again.
well, some of you are still here, and thank
Yes,
you
it's
so much.
difficult to press the button and leave this room.
Wow, that's your own,
Very creative space, I would say. Very
But
creative.
nice.
Thank you
Okay.
so much.
All right. Bye then.
Have to
Bye,
go and rest.
everybody. Stay well and stay hopeful. All right.
Yes,
Okay. Bye.
thank you. But likewise.
Okay. I'm stopping now.